Hello, welcome to the morning program, The Dailies on Echo Television, where we keep you updated with all the stories that are flowing from the Nigerian newspaper. I am Senela Shidashim, and I'll be doing the program together with Rachel Tansey. Good morning.
Morning, Selen.
All right, and to our viewers at home, do remember you can, be part of the program by joining us live on Facebook and on YouTube, and then drop your comment on any of the story that is of interest to you this morning. And we will be starting with the first paper, which is the Daily Independent newspaper.
On the Daily Independent, starting with the big story, federal government to create 17.5 million jobs with $1.5 billion injection into agro zones. Establish agri-production cluster, reduce post-harvest losses. Offer support to 100,000 farmers nationwide, boost food security. And we have World Health Organization Nigerian governors to sign Health Compact Agreement. You can start with the details on the front page. Despite more aircraft, airlines, over 200 pilots, engineers remain unemployed. Apapa Abure factions of Labour Party clash in court over Imo Guba candidate. You can start with the details on the front page and continue inside the paper. Zenith Tech Fair 3.0 ends in fanfare as finalists get cash prizes. And on Nasarawa Guba, appeal court dismisses tribunal judgment, upholds Governor Sule's election, affirms Gombe governor's victory. Senate laments absence of correct population data to plan Nigeria. ICPC warns sexual harassment attracts 7 years imprisonment. You can find details on page 6. PDP governors ask federal government to prioritize new revenue allocation formula. Optimistic Supreme Court will upturn appeal court decision on Zamfara and Plateau State. And at the downside, use ecological fund for life-threatening issues, Senate urges federal government. You can find details on page 16. We have Tinubu assents to Defense Industry Corporation Bill. You can find details on page 29. And we have a picture story where we can see the Zenith Tech Fair winners. And that's all the news on Daily Independent newspaper.
On the Voice of Liberty, coming from Nasarawa State Appeal Court upholds governor's election after tribunal sack, with detail found in the paper. And on the National Broadcasting Commission, court refused to vacate judgment barring the NBC from enforcing fines on broadcast stations. And we are also having a story here that says we must develop our agri sector to self-sufficiency. VP Shetima tells governors, with detail found in the paper. And on the 2024 budget, 2024-26 trillion naira budget, federal government targets 7.8 trillion naira loan. The Senate yesterday passed the 2024-2026 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper, and also approved a revenue projection of 16.9 trillion naira, 6 trillion naira budget deficit, and 7.8 trillion naira borrowings, with detail of the story found in the paper. Castina government spent over 10 billion naira on insecurity in 6 months. Nigeria UAE moves to resolve visa issue as Tinubu meets officials. You can find detail of that story in the paper. And on Niger Delta, Shell to face human rights claim in UK over chronic oil pollution. And coming from Kano State, high tension as APC and NPP plans protests for Saturday. Detail found in the paper, and that's all on the Voice of Liberty.
On New Telegraph newspaper, starting with the big story, we have CTA carpet security agencies, political parties on vote buying. Urges INEC to probe infractions. You can find more details on page 3. Oil output, Nigeria targets 1.8 million barrels per day ahead of OPEC plus engagement. Naira weakens to 956.33 to a dollar in official market. You can find details on page 25. INEC directs, we have NEC directs governors to revamp agri sector. You can find details of that story on page 2. And coming from the defense headquarters, 1 billion naira stolen crude Other products seized in 1 week. Discuss operating licenses expired in October. Statement coming from reps. Rivers Assembly crisis. Contempt slammed on Amerulu and Molly. You can find more details on page 29. Still on New Telegraph newspaper, we have federal government orders probe of prison officials aiding terrorists. Total Energies confirm oil leak at Egina oil field. And on food insecurity, we have 26.5 million Nigerians may face crisis in 2024. Appeal court reverses Nasarawa governor sacking, says tribunal's judgment a nullity. Then we have to rule on Ogun Guba today. PDP governors express mixed feelings over appeal court judgment. Imo Guba CTC will occupy annex headquarters today, coming from Labour Party. You can find details on page 2, 3, and 4. No accurate data to plan Nigeria, coming from the Senate committee. And at the downside of the paper, whole grains linked to slower cognitive decline. This is a study. You can find details on page 5, and that's all the news on New Telegraph newspaper.
On the Punch newspaper, federal government and state plan 18 million agri jobs, $1.5 billion fund with data found on page 2. Government to fish out prison warders aiding Boko Haram with data found in the paper. Tinubu assent bills on local military equipment production, data found on page 41. The big story here says NNPCL ends fuel import December 2024, project 4.5 trillion naira revenue. With the writer following that story says fuel importation shipping costs, port levies will stop, says Ipman and NPCL boss. Kyari insists on December deadline for Port Harcourt refinery repair. Speaker demands privatization. Detail of the story can be found inside the paper. And we are seeing NAF decorate 12 combat pilots, vow tough time for terrorists. Well, we hope that beyond the words, we'll see the work coming up. Still on the Punch newspaper, cash crunch worsened, food spending drops by 3 trillion naira. Ondo police arrest housemaid and son over killing of boss. You can find detail in the paper. Joson Oshun chapter on coalition costs over anti-Chief Justice protest. You can find detail of the story inside the paper, and we can see the picture story actually showing us the decoration of the efforts. So you can do well to grab the paper, read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On Nigerian Tribune, Lagos impounds 15 petroleum tankers for parking on port access road. Kogi freezes state and local government accounts. Appeal court reverses tribunal judgment sacking Governor Sule, upholds Inuwa's re-election. Marine and Blue Economy, heads of critical agencies sign performance bond with Ayatollah. You can find details on page 22. Zenith Tech Fair conclude with fanfare. Finalist receives cash prizes. Lalong receives certificate of return as senator-elect for Plateau South. You can find details on page 28. The big story on the paper. State FCT owe federal government 1.7 trillion naira in budget support facility. NEC rejects setting up of National Flood Management Council. Labour Party factions clash in court over suit against Imo governorship candidate. And concerning terrorism, federal government orders probe of misconduct by correctional officers. Escalating cost of medications, the worrisome risky situation in Nigeria. Panic over recovery of 88.6 billion naira debt as controversies rages over discussed operating license expiry date. Appeal court judgment, PDP governors back judiciary, believe party will get justice at Supreme Court. You can find details on page 2, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
Honestly, Richard, the escalating cost of medication is really, really worrisome in Nigeria. I was in the pharmacies about 2 days ago trying to get some drugs, and Richard, the prices of this medication is outrageous. I mean, drugs that 6 months ago or even beginning of the year you could actually get as cheap as, let's say, the most highest antibiotic then was maybe 1535. Right now, those drugs are going for as high as 30,000, 24,000 naira. This is just an eye opener to us. We will recall here we were complaining about a lot of manufacturers that live in the shores of Nigeria. And as they're living, this should be an eye opener for us to see what can we start doing to start producing all of this medication locally, because most of the medication we take, we saw, I think was the beginning of the year or middle of the year, Rachel, when we're looking at some of the pharmaceutical products and then looking at the prices.
150%
increase.
That
So
was at the beginning of the year. We wonder how many percentage
increase presently
yes,
it is, Rachel. So you could really tell that a lot of things, and then a lot of people need this medication. We're talking, are we going to talk about those who are diabetic, hepatitis, HIV, just to mention a little. And then some of these drugs are really expensive. So I'm hoping to see the Minister of Health doing something, in as much as we're looking at what we can start doing locally. I think also talking about getting some of these pharmaceutical herbs around will be important, because we have these herbs around, Rachel. We do have it. I mean, on a lighter note, I would say maybe we should go down to the, to the southwest, where we have quite a number of all of these herbs, and then they should get all of those.
They should improve. I think medicine has been evolving over the years, and then when it comes to herbs, it's also one medicine that is still on the low key, but we have health revolution in that aspect, and a lot of countries are beginning to embrace it, are beginning to enhance it, because it will be there are certain things that in the past were seen as illegal, for example, like cannabis and the rest, but now we have it as legal. We see it as medication. There are people who have prescription of marijuana, for example. So when it comes to herbs, it's evolving, and I believe that also the Nigerian government should embrace it. It should evolve in the level where it will be lab tested, processed in the proper way, and people can access it. Let there be dosage, not the type that Baba will tell you 1 cup in the morning or take half teaspoon. Let it, yes, let there be research ongoing, because we have this in access, so we don't always have to depend on the chemical, what we know as white man kind of
side
medicine.
effects.
The side,
Really
exactly.
bad.
Let there be studies, so that we know the side effect, we know the dosage, we know what it can do, and all of that, because even the Western countries are beginning to embrace these herbs, and different types of traditional medicine is beginning to become something in vogue. And then the sad thing is that we have all of this, you'll be surprised that other people will champion it, and we will start importing what we should have harnessed and made it our own in the first place. And then, of course, just as we said, when the president is in Germany trying to woo investors, we will want to see their pharmaceutical companies in Nigeria also, because a lot of times we pick our drugs and we see that it's from Germany, we see that it's one pharmaceutical company in Europe and all of that. So we want them in our country, using the resources, the raw materials we have, no matter how little. Let's have something being manufactured in this country, and then hopefully we will start seeing some stabilization. It might not be in every drug, but no matter how little the percentage is of the drug we're able to have in this country, it will go a long way.
Yeah, so I think I will be keeping our fingers crossed to make sure that all our research institutes should start working on bringing up something, because I think we really need it. Well, Rachel, let's take a look at the next paper, which is the Metrics newspaper. Ahead of OPEC Plus meeting, Nigeria raises oil production target to 2 million barrels per day. You can find detail of the story on the front page and continue in the paper. Yahaya Bello freezes Kogi State government accounts. You can find that on page 9. Plateau Zamfara Appeal Court ruling, PDP governors kick. Express confidence Supreme Court will do justice in both cases. You can find detail of the story in the paper. Sododo's bombshell. The writer says Tinubu administration inherited debt economy. CBN illegally Brazil violated the law year after year, kept on printing money. You can find more of that story on page 2. CBN Monetary Policy Trust Economic Outlook for 2024 to be unveiled today. So you can keep your fingers crossed and read more detail on page 11. Musicians to earn extra $1 billion revenue from Spotify in 5 years. really happy that they're beginning to utilize and mean all of these apps that we're having. You can find more of that on page 14. Nigerians Eurobond late market loses for the second day. This is really a sad one for marketers. You can find more of that on page 10. Also, we're seeing President Tinubu appoint Akawo as the RMEFC Federal Commissioner. You can find more of that in the paper. Court upholds restraining order barring NBC from fining broadcast stations. More of the story can be found in the paper. We have a picture story here where we can see setting economic agenda. In presence there, we can see the Vice President Kashim Shettima presiding over the 13th NEC meeting at the State House Council in Abuja yesterday. You can do well to grab the paper and read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On Dailies newspaper, aftermath of CDS allegation, federal government orders prison warders probe over Boko Haram inmate. Promises new welfare package for paramilitary. You can find details on page 6. Umwada Igbo asks Tinubu to free Kanu, says Nigeria has seen enough blood and destruction. You can find details on page 28. Troops kill 99 terrorists, arrest 198 others in 1 week, deactivate 50 illegal oil refining sites, nab 51 suspects. Suspension of Nigeria by FATF sends wrong signal to investors coming from CISLAC. You can find details on page 26. And on Imo Guba, Labour Party storms INEC headquarters, demands CTC of result. Appeal court reverses sack of Nasarawa governor, affirms Yahaya's victory in Gombe State. Rivers Assembly Court threatens contempt order against Amewule and Maul. You can find more details on page 5. Federal government to channel $1.5 billion donor funds into 36 SAPZs. You can find more details on page 6. The writer under the story says target 17.5 million jobs, 100,000 farmers. World Health Organization governor to sign health compact agreement. 4-year education roadmap on the way, says minister. You can find details on page 27. We still have a picture story showing the winners of the Zenith Tech Fair 3.0, and that's all the news on Daily Sun newspaper.
On the Guardian newspaper, high OPEX, harsh environment, knocking industrial revival jobs, where we can see the exchange rate at the black market is at 1,165 naira to a dollar, and then the interest rate is about 18.75%. Now we're seeing here that between 2015 and 2023, the manufacturing sector lost over 200 players. Factory output continues to decline. That's I'm talking about the volume and value. You can find that big story on page 4 and 5 and see how that has affected our economy and our industry in the country. Nigeria ranks 144 out of 163 in the safest country ranking for 2023. This calls for us to harness and see how we can make Nigeria to be one of the safest places in Nigeria, Rachel, because in the country, I mean in the world, I keep saying in the country, we are really, really, really behind. We're beginning to be working together with other terrorist countries, and it's really, really sad. I don't know what our security agents are doing, even though I'm happy they're beginning to probe, prison wardens that are working together with Boko Haram inmates and then others. I'm happy the house cleaning has started, and I hope we see more of the house cleaning, not just with the prison wardens, but every other security operative that are actually snitches and actually working with terrorists. We need to have them. And then above all, we still need the names of those who are financing this terrorist
saw them saying
group.
they won't release the names.
Now that is
it was
sad.
on the paper, and it was really, really sad. Exactly. And you know, Sele, it's just the more we see the papers every day, the more we realize there's so much work. And I can't help to ask, do we have people who are ready to do the work? Because the more you see the unfoldings of events in the country, the more you see that people are still sleeping on their jobs. You're a prison warder. Why are you helping Boko Haram terrorists? Do you feel you're safe? Or do you feel what they do can't come to you? It can't affect you? I don't understand the mentality behind doing certain things. Do you feel that, well, whoever they are killing is their business, my family is injured, the people they are killing in Zamfara, so I'm okay? I don't understand the mentality behind certain things we do when it comes to insecurity in this country. I don't understand the sabotage happening. It doesn't make sense, because what are you thinking? Because your brother is not enrolled in the military, so you feel the other soldiers can just go and die and let their labors be in vain, or what? There's so much cleaning up that needs to be done. There's so much work, and I just hope that we do have the people that are ready to do the work. If not, we will still wake up 10 years later and we might still be at the bottom. We might still be at 144. We might be at 150. We might even be off the list because we're not even safe completely, because we barely have 20 countries. We're like having just 19. We're just above 19 countries in safety. We're like at the bottom, very bottom of this list. And it's really sad to see that the giant of Africa is not safe. And yet we are winning investors, and this ranking is out there. And it doesn't work together. We can't have investors seeing that we're not safe. We're ranking 144. So even if they want to come because we have the resources, even if they want to come because we have the educated workforce, they might not come because we are not a safe place to be. They're worried that they might be kidnapped. They're worried that, you know what, a crisis can erupt in this region and everything will be gone completely. So I mean, so much work needs to be done, and we'll just keep praying, hoping, talking about it, that we will have people that will want to do the work. So.
Of course, of course. Let's look at other stories still on the Guardian newspaper. Military deactivate 50 illegal oil refining site, arrest 51 suspects. Detail can be found on page 8. And we have Jega Babachi and others reflect on INEC 2023 elections amid the fresh appeal court verdict. Detail inside the paper. And on international scene, Israel-Hamas war, death toll of Palestinians 14,200, says ambassador. Detail found in the paper. Reps panel probes 62 billion naira HIV and AIDS intervention funds. Detail found in the paper. Nigeria loses $10 billion yearly to imported welders, and minister lament. Well, we hope beyond lamenting, we should put the work and do something about that. Detail found inside the paper, and that's all on the Guardian newspaper.
On this newspaper, the big story, Olani Pekun appeal court can't correct clerical errors in Kano Guber judgment. Tension at NNPP APC whole rally tomorrow. Court reverses Nasarawa governor's sack. At the top of the paper, we have third edition of Zenitech Fair ends with hackathon winners receiving significant cash rewards. Total Energies confirmed first oil leak at 2.3 million barrels capacity, Egina FPSO. You can find more details on page 5. Federal government introduces $750 million World Bank assisted SABER program for states. You can find details on page 6. Shetima to governors at NEC, we must develop our agri sector for self-sufficiency. NEC to channel $1.5 billion donor funds into 36 SAPZs, targets 17.5 million jobs, 100,000 farmers nationwide. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 5. Wigway University to commence academic program in September 2024. You can find details on page 16, and that's all the news on this day newspaper.
I'm really happy the Vice President is hammering on the importance of, making sure that they concentrate on some of the special agri sectors that we are having. And that is to say that by beginning to wake up to the realities of things, that oil can no longer finance a lot of things that we need to take care of. Talking about revenue we need to generate inwardly in the country and all of that. So I'm hoping that beyond all of this money we're seeing here that will be keyed into that, I'm happy farmers will be taken along and governors have embraced this, because sometimes you can't help but imagine when you travel through some of the states, you see they are vast land but are wasting because nobody is utilizing those farmlands for something. And so I'm hoping that most of the states that are knowing that they are having vast land that can be used, and we know that they're very fertile, let us see those land being put to use from down the local government area up to the state level, where we see farming getting there. And then I think that beyond the farming also, the government should look into securing the lives of the farmers. And then let us look into making sure that these seeds are not just for manpower, Rachel, but it should be that we should be looking into doing industrial farming. Because the vast land is not for just human power, manpower and all of that. So we are hoping that more we will see more machines that will be
We'll
used
be
for all of
seeing.
this farming, because Nigerians will be happy knowing the fact that the government, in as much as we are having them at heart, we are also doing something to make sure that their life is secure. We saw the money that they lost because of the harvest and all of that. So
Yes,
I'm hoping that the
trillions of
government
naira.
will look into that as well, Rachel.
And so that it's really important at this time that, of course, we are laying emphasis, the Vice President, on agri, because you would see on the paper, we've seen it on most of the papers, that Total Energy is confirming, firstly, at a 2.3 million barrel capacity Egina oil well. And this means that these leakages, first of all, even as much as the well is having the capacity of 2.3 million barrel per day, it's not drilling that much, and then we're having leakage, and we are putting a window rather concerning meeting 1.8 million barrel per day before the next OPEC plus meeting. We're not meeting that, and we are seeing what the target for 2024 is, and then we are having leakage at our oil well. So I mean, it's high time that the federal government of Nigeria understand that oil is unpredictable, that you might sit down and wish you're making 1.8 million barrel a day,
2 million
2
barrel per
million
day
exactly.
now.
You haven't reached 1.8 yet. It's 2 million you are hoping for 2024, and we're having the oil wells now leaking that is not even being able to reach its daily capacity. So oil is not going to be sustainable for us in the long run. We are seeing every indicators, and I just hope that the government doesn't waive those indicators and keep just putting quotas that will not be reached. But let's be sensitive that, you know what, agriculture is the way forward, and we should tackle it as it is. And just as you said, Sele, we are not looking for substantial farm, we're looking for industrial, mechanized farming, that we will see hectares of land being cultivated within hours, as if it wasn't hectares of land that were worked on within short hours of time.
So we hope that the government will really look into that, because Rachel, I can't help but some of the state babies, I mean, let's get, for example, that of Niger State. They have a vast land.
They do.
You could actually pass like hectares of land, and it's not being used, and you wonder what is the governor of that state doing?
Yes.
One out of many other states that need to use their land effectively. Well, let us keep our fingers crossed and hope for that. Let's take a look at the leadership newspaper. Economic Council mulls emergency budget for flood disaster. You can find detail on page 7. Wike to partner Cuba, Mexico, and investment in the FCT. Detail found on page 11. Still on Friday, leadership newspaper. Appeal court. NNPP one justices probe over verdict, with the writer here saying challenges judgment on Kano governorship at Supreme Court. Anxiety as APC and NPP fix protest for Saturday. Inua Sude affirm as Gombe and Nasarawa governors. Detail found in the paper. And here we're seeing on terrorism financing. Federal government orders probe of prison officers. You can find that on page 7 of the paper. Troops arrest 198 terrorists and kill 99. Bauchi approves 100 billion naira for 16 roads and 2 flyovers. I hope this is really served as a good one, as we know that Bauchi is the entry to the northeast, so it is important and imperative that the route is well taken care of. You can find more of the story inside the paper, and that's all of Friday leadership. But before we move further with other papers analysis, let's take this time out to actually give you the time to chew the stories, digest it properly, and when we come back, we'll open the phone lines and hear what your own views are concerning any of the story that is on the paper. Please stay tuned with us.
Democracy is the theory that common people know what they want and deserve to get it good and hard. Join me every Friday, 7 p.m. on National Talk for analysis as well as in-depth perspective on issues as they unfold in and around Nigeria, as well as an opportunity to add your voice.
Welcome back. If you're just tuning, it's still the Dailies. We have been looking at a number of stories on the paper, how we are hoping to make our own quarter of oil production to be 2 million barrel per day, and then with the leakage, we are also observing there is a need for work. We are also seeing that in the next meeting that the vice president held with governors, they are looking into, going into special agriculture, talking about agro production. So this is really good news for Nigerians, and we hope that the government is also looking into mechanized farming. So at this moment, the numbers are on your screen. You can do well to call us. We would love to hear what your own input is concerning any of the story that is of interest to you this morning. Remember to turn down the volume of your TV set so we can hear you clearly in the studio. I still have Rachel Tanzer with me. Thank you so much,
You're
Rachel.
welcome, Sarah.
All right, let's take a look at the next paper, which is the Blueprint newspaper.
On the Blueprint newspaper, Sule wins appeal, joins Otu Umba alias Sanwo-Olu for Supreme Court battle. Jubilant supporters hail victory, Governor tax APC members on sincerity. The battle continues, says Natural Cross River PDP. Details can be found on page 6. Amid rep support, NNPCL targets 2 trillion naira profit in 2023 fiscal year. You can find more details on page 20. Millions of naira won at Zenith Bank's tech fair ends. Troops neutralize 99 terrorists, arrest 198 in 1 week. A report from the defense headquarters. Malagi has shown capacity to deliver in information ministry coming from Alake. POS operators cry out over naira scarcity, threatens higher charges. UBASA competition, 15-year-old Adeze carts home 5 million naira. Lawyers fined 100,000 naira for smuggling defense statement into court file. This happened in Edo State. You can find details on page 9. Senate seeks Nigeria's inclusion in $147 billion global bitumen market. Ondo with $42 billion worth deposit, highest in Africa. You can find more details on page 6, and that's all news on Blueprint newspaper.
On the Vanguard newspaper, we're having the big story on the MBS report. Families spend more as inflation persists, where we're seeing record 3.3% rise in the second quarter of 2023. Families shifted toward recurrent, I take that right, families shifting toward recurrent rather than saving and investment. This is coming from the XCIS boss. It is induced by a base effect. This is also coming from another analyst, and we're seeing that fiscal stimulus might have played a role. Coming from ID Africa, the GDP by expenditure grows by 2.31%. Economic drafting, other APC's rot. This is coming from APC's watch. This is coming from the Labour Party. Economic drafting under the APC's watch. You can coming from the Labour Party. APC government remains committed to tackling poverty. Coming from the party leader. Nigerians getting poorer, hungry, while federal government borrows to fund luxury. Coming from Articles 8, you can find detail of the big story on page 5. Also here we are seeing on NGX axis 30 companies over corporate governance, detail found on page 19. We have roadmap to tackle challenges in education sector coming from the president. And still on the Nasarawa State case, appeal court reverses sack of Governor Sule. Boko Haram federal government probe prison warders alleged convenience with terrorists, detail found on page 41. Northern elders express concern over the conduct of the judiciary, detail found on page 8. And on Kano State, Yoruba community begged Tinubu Obasanjo to intervene in political crisis, with detail found on page 32. We have the winners that emerge at the Zenith Bank Tech Fair. You can see them with their prizes with them. Also, we're having other columns for sport and others. You can do well to grab the paper, read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On the Nation newspaper, appeal court voids tribunal verdict sacking Sule. PDP governors confident Lawal Mutfwang will get justice. Latsma GM Areba removed in shake-up. MPA, NIMAS, and IWA signed performance bond with minister. Ogun to begin building of CNG bus station. Court remands oil monarch. More details of stories can be found on page 27. The big story on the Nation newspaper states FCTO federal government 1.72 trillion naira budget support cash, subnationals to pay back 49 billion naira each, program terminated. We have a court that says the decision to discontinue the budget support loan program was reached after careful consideration of the current economic realities and the need to ensure fiscal prudence. You can find more details on the front page and continue on page 4. Tinubu to decide on ministerial along Senate seat, ex-governor picks certificate of return. African Development Bank $1 billion boost to create 500,000 jobs in agri sector and special processing zones for 7 states and FCT. More details can be found on page 4. Jusun disowns Osun chapter strike over government role with Chief Justice. You can find more details on page 27, and that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at the world of business. What's happening on Business Day newspaper? Education, tech, internal mobility seen as key to retaining employees. Education, tech, internal mobility seen as key to retaining employees. So you can find more detail of that on page 33. Also, we see Dubai open Nigeria office in bid to boost trade. Says move part of the 10-year economic plan, data found in the paper. Also, we see federal government unveils security strategy to spur mining investment. Federal government unveils security strategy to spur mining investment, data found in the paper. Ticket racketeering boom as Apapa calls up delay. You can find more of that story in the paper. We have other stories too on the front page of the paper. Why Dubai in global market for business, and then other stories inside the paper as well. And that's all on Business Day newspaper.
On Sporting Sun newspaper, ahead Liverpool Man City clash. Ibrahima donate Gomez, others get injury boost. We have Ghanaian politician apologizes for mocking Maguire. Saudi club searching for Neymar's replacement. We have Deco opens up on Gavi's Barca future. Injured Haaland up for Liverpool. Di Maria mad at Maracana. We have Atletico Madrid tempting Joao Felix. The big story on the paper, Uni out of AFCON 2023 undergoes groin surgery. More details can be found on page 6. Nigeria not massive favorite, statement coming from Mikel still on the AFCON 2023. And we have those who want replacement for Uziho in Super Eagles. Ibra's son heads Sweden under 15 football team. You can find details at the back page. And then we have Muhammad Ali's grandson to turn professional boxer. You can find more details at the back page. And that's all the news on Sporting Sun newspaper.
All right, let's come back to some other papers as well. Let's take a look at the Nigerian News Direct. 15-year-old Onaru Adeze emerges winner of the UBA Foundation AC competition. Data found in the paper. Again, Ogun State lead in adoption of the CNG bus. You can find more to commence construction of the CNG bus station and others. You can find more detail in the paper. CBN makes upward price review of Nigerian treasury bills. Detail found in the paper. Tech talent win 59 million naira prize at the Zenith Bank's Tech Fair. And the big story on the Guba election, appeal court judgment spy controversies. As court restates Sule as governor of Nasarawa State, Cross River Benue PDP challenge court verdict head to the Supreme Court. Detail found on page 4. And on power epilepsy, Delta governor hints on possible acquisition of the BEDC by Delta and 3 other states. More detail of that story can be found inside the paper, and that's all on Nigerian News Direct.
On the Daily Times newspaper, the big story, sack of Mutfan, how PDP helped APC win Plateau governorship. We have a statement from the Board of Trustee member Tapgun. Explains the IU junk links, counsels governor against going to Supreme Court and PDP plotting incoming governor's fall claims APC. You can find details on page 2. On terrorist financing, purge looms in NCS as federal government orders investigation of officers' misconduct. Following intelligence by CDS, federal government warns of severe punishment for complicit personnel. Obstructing NAFDAC official during inspection and offense, a statement coming from director, and of course that shouldn't be held. If you're trying to obstruct them, it means you're trying to hide something. You can find more details on page 9. Tinubu okays appointment of RMAFT federal commissioner. Nigeria, a burial ground for Christians, coming from ICC. Muslim clerics react to that statement. You can find more details on page 5. And at the downside of the paper, we have amidst hardship, small-scale traders lament dismantling of stores in Oshobo. You can find details on page 9. And we have a picture story showing one of the outstanding students of Central Primary School, Jada Adamawa State, receives an award from former Vice President Atiku Abubakar. And that's all the news on the Daily Times newspaper.
We're just like you're saying, obstructing the NAFTA, not just NAFTA officials, obstructing any officer of the law during an interrogation is actually an offense. So, except if you have something to hide, or except if you're being maltreated, which sometimes we feel that sometimes our officers have a way of maltreating citizens, especially civilians, during interrogation. Something that is as simple as show me this, show me that. We've seen videos that are circulating on when sometimes we see security agency maltreating civilians, and it's not supposed to be so. So we hope, over the years, people have said maybe, especially for the police, when you're interacting with civilians, there should be a better way of interrogating, because you were trained in a way that you deal with civilians. So you should also deal with them as if, because they say police your friend. I kept saying that since yesterday. So I think it's important that you know that beyond just trying to win, there should be a better way of doing things. And then also we're seeing small-scale businesses complaining. I think it's not just there, it's everywhere. But we hope that with what the Vice President is doing something about agriculture, that everybody will feel the impact. It might not be now, because we know this is a long-term plan. Yeah, but we hope that eventually we'll begin to feel the impact soon. And the generation to come, we know that, yes, the President is working and other things are falling in place as well. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for doing the program with me.
You're welcome.
Thank you to our viewers at home for keeping a day with us. Thank you to our supporters as well for keeping a day with us on the program. Until we come your way again, do have a blessed weekend ahead.